Hi. I'm so excited to finally make this video. This is actually my second time filming this because the first time that I did, the sound was not working at all. So today we're back and we are making it work. We're making it happen. This is the first video in a new series where I recommend Child-free by choice romance books. Yay! This video and series has been a long time coming, okay? When I got back into reading years and years and years ago, I read a ton of romance. The romance genre is probably to this day the genre that I read the most of because the books are very easy to get through. I love romance, and I don't have to use a lot of brain power to read romance books. They're very formulaic, and I kind of know what to expect, right? That being said, I started to notice that every single romance book ended with
marriage and babies.
I'm not here to sit around and tell you that those things are bad or that you shouldn't want them. I think you should want whatever you want in your life and you deserve that. I'm here to tell you that I don't want those things for myself and for my life. I'm a child-free by choice person. I have never wanted kids. I don't plan on ever having kids. And back in the day, that was a very controversial take. But with the way that the world is, more and more people are voicing that they don't want kids, that they don't see themselves having kids, that it's not financially possible to have kids. Whatever the reason may be, being child-free by choice is becoming more normalized. And I love it. I love, 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 love. I love to see it, okay? However, I wasn't seeing that being reflected in the romance books that I was reading. I hadn't found any authors or characters that were child-free by choice. If I ever did find a character in a romance book that announced to everyone that they didn't want kids, or that they weren't ready for kids, or that they didn't see themselves becoming a parent, I can't tell you how many times those books ended up with that person having kids. By the end of that book, by the epilogue, that character arc went from child-free by choice to parent of 3. And yes, that does happen in real life. That happens. However, where are the characters that say they're child-free and stay child-free? I was fully prepared to never find a book where the character would stay child-free until I read the book that became the catalyst for all of this. And that book is, in fact, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I was flabbergasted to finally read a book, a very beloved and popular book by a well-known author, with main characters who, as a couple, say that they don't want kids, and
In a shocking twist,
by the end of the book, stay child-free. After reading this, I decided to go on a scavenger hunt across the internet, across social media, research and do a deep dive into any and all possible books that I could find with a child-free by choice couple or character. Lo and behold, I found my treasure. I found Reddit thread upon Reddit thread, Goodreads lists, blog posts, all of those filled with child-free by choice romance book recommendations. I was elated to know that I wasn't the only one feeling this way about romance books. I wasn't the only one looking for a child-free happy ending, because they do happen. I will link all of the really great lists and resources that I found below so you can get even more recommendations aside from the books that I'm going to recommend in this video. This is only going to be part 1. I have so many more recommendations down the road to give to you because upon doing my research, the one place that I couldn't find any recommendations from was YouTube. It's funny, when I looked up child-free by choice in the search bar on YouTube, I was immediately recommended surprise pregnancy trope videos.
okay,
I was talking to my best friend and I was like, I think I'm just gonna make one. And she was like, yeah, just make one. You can be the child-free by choice romance rec girly on there. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So that brings us here to this video. In this part 1, I am going to recommend more of the popular titles that I found. So these will be the books that, when I was doing all of my research, were the books that people recommended the most to start off with. I'm actually going to start off with an honorable mention. This honorable mention is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This book has a really fun premise. It's a romance between Emily and Simon. Emily is moving to a small town where her sister lives to, I think, help her out with something. And in this small town, they host a local Renaissance fair. And Simon comes from a family that's like a legacy at this Renaissance fair. They've helped out with this Renaissance fair and created the magic for it for a really long time. They meet, I believe, before the Renaissance fair, but then they both play characters at the Ren fair. She ends up becoming a barmaid and he plays this really broody, hot pirate. I've never read a book that took place at a Renaissance fair or was centered around a Renaissance fair, and this made me want to go to one really badly. Like, it sounds so much fun, and I love the different characters that people get to play and all the fun activities. I think they recreate like a fight scene with like swords and armor, and it just sounds like a fun time. The reason why this is an honorable mention is because Emily and Simon decide to be a child-free couple, but it's not mentioned in their book. It's mentioned in, I don't know if it's the book after this one or the third book, because this, I believe, is a series with 4 books, and each book follows different couples. So they don't mention it in their own book, which is a crime, because I wish they did mention it in their own book. But later on in the series, they do pop up in one of the other books, and they say that they've decided not to have kids. But at least you can read this book, know that they fall in love, and know that they have a happy ending with no kids. So that's Well Met by Jen DeLuca. Now that we're done with the honorable mention, I'm gonna dive into the recommendations. And of course, the first book is going to be the book that started it all for me, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is one of my favorite books of all time. This is my favorite Emily Henry book that I've read. It is a romance between Nora, who's a cutthroat literary agent, and Charlie, who is a broody book editor. They fall in love in this small town, but they both come from New York City and they love living in the big city. They love their life out there. They love their career. And of course, the best part about them is that they are both child-free by choice. It has the signature Emily Henry wit and banter and really funny moments. I do want to read some excerpts from these books of what the characters actually say in terms of voicing that they are child-free by choice, so you guys kind of know what you're getting into when you're reading these books. Nora and Charlie are having a conversation about being in control of things, and Charlie jokingly asks if she fired her pregnant assistant, and Nora says, "What's so wrong with being in control anyway? Just because I don't want kids, I would supposedly punish a pregnant woman for making a different decision than me. My favorite person's a pregnant woman, and I'm obsessed with my nieces. Not every decision a woman makes is some grand indictment on other women's lives." Period. And then later in the book, I know they have a conversation about Charlie and why he doesn't want kids, and it kind of establishes the fact that they both have the same ideals and values, and they both want the same things for their future. Charlie is explaining to Nora why him and his ex broke up, and Charlie says, "It wasn't just that I was too boring for her. She also decided that she wanted kids, or I guess admitted she did, and was just waiting for me to change my mind." Nora asks him, "You don't?" And Charlie says, "I hated being a kid. I'd have no idea how to get someone else through it, and I definitely wouldn't enjoy it. I like them, but I don't want to be responsible for any." These two have my whole heart. They say they're child-free by choice, so you can expect a really great romance and also child-free by choice characters that stay child-free till the end in Book Lovers by Emily Henry. All right, the next book is by far one of the most hilarious books I've ever read. This is The Worst Guy by Kate Canterbury, and if you couldn't tell by the amount of tabs I have on here, this is one of my favorite books of all time. I love this book with everything that I have. I've reread it multiple times. I actually make it a tradition to reread this at least once a year because this is such a great book to read when I need a reset, when I need to cleanse my palate and read something fun, emotional, a good time, and know that I will laugh my fucking ass off reading this. Okay, let's get into it. So this is a romance between Sarah and Sebastian, who are both surgeons that work at the same hospital. They have the same mutual circle They're more Sebastian's friends, but Sarah is an acquaintance of everyone, so they are interacting with each other a lot, and they also work together. But these two have a very strong dislike for each other. I don't want to say that it is enemies to lovers. I hate it when people say that it's enemies to lovers, especially when it is more hate to love. This is definitely hate to love. These two cannot stand each other. They both have specific ways of doing things and are very stubborn and don't want to give up or give in to the other because they have a lot of pride and ego. They end up causing so much chaos whenever they are in the same vicinity as each other that they are then forced to participate in 8 weeks of hospital mandated conflict resolution counseling. Basically like professional co-worker couples counseling. They create such a hostile work environment for everyone around them, and whenever these two are together, all of the other like employees in the area are just miserable. They're like, oh my god, these two again. So they're in this forced couples counseling for 8 weeks, and the absolute chaos that these two get into, it's so funny to read, and their banter is top tier, but they still have so much tension and chemistry between them. It's kind of like watching a train wreck that you can't look away from because they're such a mess, both individually and together, and yet they make so much sense together, you know? They each have their own emotional trauma and issues that going to these sessions actually helps them work through it. They're there for each other through very trying times. Like, they go through it in this book, and they are one of my favorite couples of all time. I love them to death. They are definitely a couple that I believe in my heart stays together after the book ends, after the epilogue. And the best part, they are both child-free by choice. In this book, Sarah admits that she does not want kids because of her career. She is really focused on her job, and she knows that if she had a kid, she would not be able to have that time or be willing to give that time that it takes to nurture a child. And Sebastian agrees. He understands completely because he's also a doctor and he knows how much time their work takes, and he is totally on board, and he never really saw himself having kids. They're both very passionate about what they do, and they don't want to sacrifice what they have going to have kids because it is a huge commitment. This is a little bit of a spoiler. It's not a huge one, but if you don't want to get spoiled for it, you can skip forward a little bit. It's in the last couple of chapters, but Sebastian does say that he will get a vasectomy because he knows that neither of them wants kids. And honestly, there's nothing more romantic than a man getting a vasectomy, in my opinion. That is The Worst Guy by Kate Canterbury. The next book that I have to recommend is Bet Me by Jennifer Cruzy. This is a book that was written back in 2004, and it was a book that many people had said was the first book that they ever read that had a child-free by choice couple. For it being written in the early 2000s, there are a few outdated jokes. I'm gonna leave it at that. But I have read a few other Jennifer Cruzy books, and I love her writing. She has the best dry, sarcastic humor that if you're not paying attention or really get it, it will go over your head. But for me, she hits every single time. She, like, that humor, I get it. So this book is about Minerva and Calvin, who both go as Min and Cal. I'm gonna call them that because Minerva and Calvin, those names I can't. But these two have mutual friends and are both really averse to relationships. Cal asks Min to a date because of a bet, and Min is like, fuck it, fine. I completely forget what the bet is even about because it's been so long since I've read this. But they both agree at the end of the date that they are never going to see each other again. They're like, yeah, this was fun, but this is not going to work out. However, due to certain circumstances, they continuously run into each other because, again, they have mutual acquaintances, and just certain situations bring them together in some way, shape, or form. They eventually develop a friendship that obviously turns into more. They repeat throughout this book, each individually, to themselves, to their friends, and then to each other that they don't want kids and that they have no plans on ever having kids. So I don't think I really need to read a specific excerpt because they mention it plenty of times in this book that they don't want kids. And I love that. I love that they reiterate more than once that that is not what they want. Definitely take a little bit of caution with this one because like I said, it was written back in the early 2000s. So just be mindful of that. But still a really good time, still enjoyed it, still recommend. Bet Me by Jennifer Crusie. All right, the next book I have to recommend is 'Tis the Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth. This is a holiday romance. So when you're in the holiday mood around Christmas time and you want a fun, very spicy, really sweet, emotional, and just a fun time for the holiday season, pick this up. It's so good. It is probably my favorite Christmas holiday romance book ever. It combines three of my favorite things in this world. Okay, Christmas, a hot silver fox, and no kids. We have a romance between Abby and Damien. In the beginning of this book, Abby's actually dating a man named Richard, and they reminded me so much of Elle and Warren in Legally Blonde in the beginning. The first few scenes, actually, I feel like they were taken out of the movie because Warren. What is his? Richard. Oh my God. Richard is a lawyer at this very prestigious law firm and he's trying to become partner. He takes Abby to their company Halloween party. She shows up dressed similarly to the way that Elle Woods was dressed at that costume holiday party. If you know, you know. I don't remember if it was exactly the same like bunny outfit, but she is the only one wearing a costume basically. She walks into this company Halloween party and everyone's in suits and ties. And she's just like, oh,
I thought this was a Halloween party.
Richard breaks up with her shortly after. I want to say the day after or maybe that night. He breaks up with her because he just can't take her seriously. He feels like she has no direction in her life. She's bad for his image and breaks up with her. She goes on a dating app and decides to hook up with this really hot guy named Damien. He's a little bit older. Turns out he is the founding partner at the law firm that Richard works at and is also Richard's boss. Period. She wants to date Damien and make him fall for her so that he will take her to their Christmas company party and show Richard up, be like, well, you don't want me, but your boss does. We support women's rights just as much as we support women's wrongs, okay? Very iconic, very fun. I love this. Like I said, it's a little bit of an age gap, and the way that Damien worships the ground that she walks on and the way that he takes care of her and assures her in a way Richard could never. The mouth on this man. Abby is a makeup artist at a beauty counter in a really large department store. So think MAC counter at Nordstrom. And she is so content with her life. She loves what she does. She loves making people happy and making them feel beautiful. She loves helping women feel so confident in themselves. It makes her feel confident in what she does. And she's just really happy with her life and she doesn't really want more. But that was what the issue was with Richard. And Damien, he loves her for who she is and he supports her and he's so happy that she's happy in her life. They do have a really great conversation about not wanting kids, and I think the reason why I really like this is because why they both don't want kids was such a realistic reason to not want kids. I think it's a reason that we can all relate to. So they're talking about families and Damien asks her, do you want kids? And she thinks in her head, I'm unsure of how to respond or if I should just give him an easier fake answer. Not because I don't fully believe in the answer I'm about to give, but because society has decided that if you are a woman of childbearing age and not adamant about reproducing, people quickly assume that there is something wrong with you. Still, I sigh before answering no. And he says no, and she says nope. and he asks, is there a reason? I'll admit this is new. Someone rarely asks why before they jump down my throat, telling me how lonely I'll be when I'm old or how it's something I'll regret. How in 4 or 5 years, my clock will start ticking like I'm some kind of computer program, and I'll need to scramble to find someone to agree to give me children graciously. As if that's all a woman could possibly have to live for. So what do you want instead, he asks. I want love, and I want passion, excitement. I want to travel and to spend my money on expensive shoes instead of diapers. I want to be able to up and leave if I want to without worrying about schools and pediatricians and whatever the fuck else. Period. And he also says, I don't want kids either. I don't want to bring more kids into this world. I see day in and day out the horrors of the world, just how shitty people can be, how absolutely low people can go. Some days I look at a case file and the future feels so fucking bleak. I can't bring a child into the world knowing that's out there. We love to fucking see it. I love how comfortable they were stating all those things, because that is a very scary and daunting thing to admit to someone when you don't know whether or not they want kids. So I love that they both voiced that and they both agree and they found their child-free by choice love. So good. Read this. 'Tis a Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth. The next book I have to recommend is Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. Rebecca is such an underrated author. She writes fun romances with the most interesting characters. This is, I think, the 3rd book I read from her, and every one was just a really fantastic time. In this, we follow a romance between Zenny and Mason. Zenny's aunt Sable recently passes away, so Zenny goes to her huge mansion that Sable had in upstate New York to claim her inheritance. But this inheritance comes with a stipulation, and that's a marriage. This is a marriage of convenience, babes. Yes, it is. Turns out her Aunt Sable has already decided who the groom's going to be, and that is, in fact, Mason. Sable was a mentor to Mason, and they were really good friends. I don't remember how they became friends, but he's like in her little friend group. They're like a found family. And actually, they meet for the first time at Sable's funeral. Mason is from Scotland, and he literally shows up in a kilt, bagpipes ready to go at this funeral. And Zenny's like, who the fuck is that? He is trying to pay off a debt because of his brother. There was some family businesses going on, and he's trying to pay off that debt. And Sable leaves him a huge sum of money in her will. But again, the stipulation is the marriage. There's a ton more to this, but that's kind of like the overall basic gist of it. They are such a riot together. Mason's also bisexual, so I love that representation. And they're just very two quirky, fun characters, and I absolutely loved their romance. I do want to get into them deciding to be child-free. This is kind of a spoiler and also a little bit of a trigger warning, so just keep that in mind moving on. But Zenny is child-free by choice. After the fact, she had gotten pregnant twice before. The first time she had had a miscarriage, and the second time she decided to have an abortion. She just realized that she wasn't ready. She didn't want to be a mom. She didn't want to be a parent. She didn't want kids. And I actually really appreciated the way that Rebecca wrote about the abortion in this, because it was in such a positive light. I hardly ever see abortion spoken about or even touched upon in romance books in general. I love that in this book, Zenny was just like, I got it because I didn't want kids, and I wasn't ready for that, and I don't regret it, and I'm happy that it happened. I really appreciated that, and Mason obviously is very supportive, and he agrees to, like, he doesn't want kids. Like, he already had a lot to deal with growing up in his family, and he just doesn't want to pass that on. I thought that was a very healthy conversation and really great representation for that. So that's Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. The next book is A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Dara. This is a book that if you come from a culturally large family where everyone has a billion kids by the time that they're 30, you will relate to this heavily. This is a romance between Michelle and Gabe, and Michelle comes from a Puerto Rican Italian family. Huge, right? She's leaving her corporate marketing career to become a freelance graphic designer. So she, at all these family gatherings, is getting the questions of, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna have kids? And like I said, if you come from a culturally large family like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because we have all been there. And it is so annoying and so frustrating. She gets those questions all the time, and she feels like she's the black sheep of the family because she's not following in the same footsteps that a lot of the women in her family have taken, which again, I'm sure we've all been there, we've all felt that way. Gabe is the owner of a really fancy, high luxury elite gym in Los Angeles, and he's going back to New York City, where they're both from, to open a second location, and they were friends before in the past, and they had a little bit of a thing, but it never became anything serious. And then Gabe left and moved away, and so their friendship became estranged. Now he's back. They reunite, and of course, they fall in love. Like I said, I related to Michelle a lot because I come from a big Filipino family where everyone has a minimum of 2 kids, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. I also felt like the black sheep because I wanted a life that was the complete opposite of the life that I grew up seeing. And this book could get corny and cheesy at times, but I think because of how much I related to the characters and that sort of feeling that you get of, you know, I'm so different from everyone in my family, I really enjoyed it a lot. Oh, and by the way, they're both bi in this book, which is phenomenal. So I love that representation even more. But I am going to read the excerpt of where they talk about being child-free. So Michelle says to Gabe, "Love and romance just aren't for me." And Gabe says, "But you deserve those things." And she says, "If that were true, my romantic life wouldn't have gone the way it has. It's fine. I don't plan to ever get married or have kids. I love my nieces and nephews, but I don't have any urge to have kids of my own." Yep, same. And Gabe says, "Same. I'm content to be an uncle." And sometimes it takes a small conversation to establish that, and that's all you need, right? So I love the representation in this book. Like I said, it does get a bit corny and cheesy, but the representation that you get in this is something you can't replace. So I really enjoyed it. Still highly recommend. A lot like Adios by Alexis Dara. Okay, we've made it to the end. The last recommendation that I have is A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. This is a book that I probably wouldn't have picked up if it weren't for this list because I don't typically read historical romances. However, after reading it, I will say I am a fan of historical romances. I really, really enjoyed this. This is a romance between Luz Alana and James Evanston Sinclair. We'll get to the names later. Luz is an heiress to her family's very successful rum business in the Caribbean. She's from Santo Domingo. Unfortunately, her dad passes away suddenly, and she's unable to inherit the business because she is not married. She is chosen as a representative of the company because she really wants to expand her family's business, and she sets sail for Paris, where there is this huge world exposition going on where merchants from all around the globe can come and showcase all of their product or whatever company they have. It's a way for people to get networking, make business connections, and get their product known. She does face a lot of misogyny and racism also, being a woman of color, and a lot of people don't want to do business with her because of that. What I love about Luz the most is she is a very determined character. She does not let anyone walk over her, and she does it in a classy, respectable way, to the point where sometimes I would be like, girl,
Sometimes violence is the answer.
the way that some of these men would talk to her, oh no, throw some hands.
That man deserved it.
Nope. Luz is classy. She is, she's an heiress, baby. She knows how to keep it calm and keep it moving. And then we have James Evanston Sinclair, who goes by Evan, which I would have rather him go by James, but that was a family name and he doesn't like to be associated with that. But anyway, he is an Earl of Scotland. He wants nothing to do with his family's business because of his father. His father is very greedy and very sketchy. It's a lot of dirty money and dirty business that he doesn't want to be a part of. So he flees Scotland and goes to Paris to try to make it on his own. And they meet at this exposition where she is setting up her table and everything. And he is immediately interested in her and finds her so fascinating. This is also another marriage of convenience, which I didn't realize I had 2 on this list. I mean, you know, she can't inherit her family's business until she's married, and him, in order to get away from his family and to completely strip himself away from everything that has to do with them, he decides to help her and get married to her so that he can help her with her business. And if I remember correctly, they individually say in their own inner monologue that they both don't decide to want kids. I don't remember if they have a specific conversation about not wanting kids together, but I do know that Luz says that she has no interest in becoming a parent, and she even takes or has something that is called like a cervical cap that prevents her from having kids. It's a historical birth control, couldn't tell you. So they are a childfree by choice couple, which for it being in this took place in 1889, kind of controversial for them not to want kids, you know? So love that for them, love that for her. That's A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. Okay, those are all the Child Free by Choice romance book recommendations I have for you today in this first video. This was so much fun, and like I said, I'm so excited to finally start this series. I have a ton more recommendations to go, and I have even more Child Free by Choice books that I want to get to. More and more are coming out as time goes on. I'm actually really behind on my Child Free by Choice romance books TBR. I have so many that I need to get to. I can't wait to share all the ones that I have already read. I have some more good ones on the way. I also want to do themed books, like I have one for small town. I'm trying to build one for paranormal and fantasy, but anyway, that's gonna be down the line, right? If you have any recommendations at all that I didn't mention or that you really, really love and you want to share with everyone, leave it down below so we can all read and get as many recommendations as we possibly can out there. I have my own Goodreads list also that I've created with all of the books that I've read. I'll leave that down below too. There's, I want to say, almost like 63, 64 books on there already. So there's even more recommendations from me to you guys. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!